the loneliness that comes when you finally understand life. A motivation thrones production. There's a peculiar kind of loneliness that no one warns you about. It doesn't come from being alone. It doesn't come from heartbreak or loss. It comes from something far more profound, understanding. When you finally see life for what it truly is, when the veil lifts and reality reveals itself in all its raw, unfiltered truth, something changes forever. You become different, and that difference creates a distance between you and almost everyone else. They say ignorance is bliss. They're right. But once you've tasted awareness, once you've seen through the illusions that keep most people comfortable, you can't go back. And that's where the loneliness begins. Today, we're exploring the isolation that comes with awakening, and why understanding life more deeply than others can be the most isolating experience of all. Part 1. The moment everything changes, the awakening you didn't ask for it usually starts with a crack, a loss that shatters your worldview, a betrayal that forces you to question everything, a moment of clarity that arrives uninvited in the middle of an ordinary day. Suddenly you see it, the patterns, the cycles, the truth hiding beneath the surface of everything you've been taught. It's not a gentle realization, it's an earthquake. And when the dust settles, nothing looks the same anymore. You look around and realize everyone else is still asleep. They're playing the game, following the script, believing the stories, and you're awake, alone, in a crowd of dreamers. The loss of innocence, there's a grief that comes with understanding. You mourn the person you used to be, the one who could enjoy surface-level conversations, who believed the promises society made, who trusted that hard work always pays off and good people always win. That person is gone, and in their place stands someone who sees too much, questions too deeply, and can no longer find comfort in the comfortable lies everyone else accepts without question. You didn't choose this. But now that you're here, there's no path back to who you were. The unbridgeable gap, the hardest part, you can't explain it to people who haven't experienced it themselves. You try to share what you've learned, what you've seen, what you understand now, but your words fall flat. They look at you with confusion, concern, or worse, pity. They think you're being negative, overthinking, too serious. They tell you to lighten up or stop being so deep. They don't understand that you're not trying to be difficult. You're simply awake. And once you're awake, casual conversations feel like trying to breathe underwater. Part 2, the isolation of seeing truth, watching people chase illusions. When you understand life, you see people differently. You watch them chase careers that will never fulfill them. You see them build relationships on foundations of neediness rather than genuine connection. You observe them measuring their worth by metrics that mean nothing in the grand scheme of existence, and you can't participate anymore. You can't pretend that the promotion matters more than peace of mind. You can't fake enthusiasm for goals that are hollow. You can't celebrate achievements that come at the cost of someone's humanity. This isn't judgment, it's exhaustion. You're tired of watching people hurt themselves in pursuit of things that were never real to begin with. The weight of unspoken knowledge you carry, knowledge that isolates you. You understand that most people are acting from wounds they haven't healed. You see how fear drives nearly every decision society makes. You recognize that the loudest voices are often the most insecure. But you can't say these things out loud, because truth without permission is called rudeness. Insight without invitation is called arrogance. So you stay silent, and the silence becomes a prison. You sit in rooms full of people and feel completely alone because you're having a different conversation in your head than the one happening out loud. You're aware of subtext, of what's not being said, of the psychological games people don't even know they're playing. The curse of seeing ahead, understanding life, means seeing patterns. And seeing patterns means predicting outcomes. You watch people make choices and you already know where those choices lead. You see the relationship that will end in heartbreak. You see the business venture that's doomed from the start. You see the path of self-destruction before it fully unfolds. And you're powerless, because people have to learn their own lessons. They won't hear your warnings. They can't see what you see until they've lived it themselves. So you watch, knowing what's coming, unable to prevent it. And that knowledge becomes another layer of loneliness. Part 3, the solitude of depth conversations that no longer satisfy small talk becomes torture. Not because you think you're above it, but because you literally can't sustain interest in it anymore. Your mind wanders, you feel like you're wasting time. You wonder why you're discussing the weather when there are questions about existence, meaning, purpose, truth waiting to be explored. You long for conversations that matter, discussions that challenge you, that make you think differently, that explore the mysteries of human experience. But these conversations are rare. Most people aren't interested in depth. They're interested in comfort. So you learn to play along. You smile and nod. You give the expected responses. But inside, you're somewhere else entirely. And that disconnect is its own kind of loneliness. The rarity of kindred spirits. Every so often, you meet someone who gets it, someone who's also awake, someone who speaks your language and doesn't think you're crazy or negative or too much. These moments are profound. You feel seen for the first time in months, maybe years. The loneliness lifts. You talk for hours and it feels like minutes. You finally remember what connection feels like. But these people are rare. And often, even when you find them, circumstances pull you apart. Geography, timing, different life paths. And you're left alone again, now carrying the additional grief of knowing what you're missing, creating your own world. Eventually, you realize you have to build a life that makes sense to you, even if it makes no sense to anyone else. You have to create your own meaning, your own community, your own version of what a good life looks like. You stop expecting others to understand. You stop trying to fit your square peg existence into round hole expectations. You embrace the solitude and make it sacred rather than sad. This is where you discover that loneliness and aloneness are not the same thing. You can be alone without being lonely if you fill that space with purpose, creativity, growth, and self-understanding. Part 4, the awakening paradox, more aware, less belonging. Here's the paradox: the more you understand about life, the less you fit into it. The more conscious you become, the more unconscious behavior around you becomes unbearable. The more you grow, the more you outgrow. This is the price of awakening. You gain clarity but lose belonging. You find truth but lose community. You become more yourself but less connected to the collective. And there are days when you wonder, was it worth it? Would it be easier to just go back to sleep, to accept the illusions, to be part of the herd again? But you can't. And deep down you wouldn't even if you could, because ignorance might be bliss, but awareness is freedom, and you'd rather be lonely and free than connected and confined. The evolution continues, understanding life isn't a destination. It's a journey. And the more you understand, the more you realize how much you don't know. Each layer of truth reveals another layer beneath it. Each answer generates 10 new questions. This means the loneliness can deepen over time. Because you're not just ahead of where you used to be, you're ahead of where most people will ever be. You're exploring territories of consciousness that have no maps, no guidebooks, no companions. You're a pioneer in your own awareness, and pioneers are always lonely, finding peace in the void. But here's what happens if you stick with it. You eventually find peace. Not the peace of never being lonely, but the peace of accepting that loneliness is part of the package, that it's not a problem to be solved, but a reality to be embraced. You learn that some paths are meant to be walked alone, that your understanding is your responsibility, not your burden, that isolation can be a sacred space for growth rather than a punishment for awareness. You stop needing others to validate your insights. You stop waiting for permission to see what you see and know what you know. You become your own authority. And in that sovereignty, you find a different kind of connection, not to people, but to life itself. Part 5, wisdom from the lonely peak, what you gain in the solitude. Yes, awakening isolates you, but it also liberates you. In your loneliness, you discover strengths you never knew you had. You develop an unshakable sense of self because you've had to rely on yourself when no one else understood. You learn discernment. You develop intuition. You cultivate wisdom that can only come from direct experience of truth, not borrowed beliefs. You become someone who knows rather than someone who merely believes. The gift you can offer your loneliness has a purpose. You've walked through the darkness and survived. You've questioned everything and found your own answers. And now you have something valuable to offer, perspective. You become a beacon for others who are just beginning to wake up. They find your words and feel less alone. They see your journey and gain courage for their own. Your isolated experience becomes a bridge for someone else's awakening. This is why you had to go through it alone, so you could light the way for others, the invitation to others. If you're experiencing this loneliness, know this: you're not broken, you're not too much, you're not doing life wrong. You're simply awake in a sleeping world, and that was always going to be lonely. But your loneliness is proof of your courage. You chose truth over comfort. You chose growth over belonging. You chose to see rather than to sleep. And somewhere out there, others are walking the same lonely path. You haven't met them all yet, but they exist. They understand, they see what you see. And when your paths cross, you'll recognize each other instantly. Conclusion: the loneliness that comes with understanding life is real. It's profound. It's sometimes overwhelming. Awakening does isolate you more than ignorance ever did. But here's what they don't tell you, that isolation is also your initiation. It's the fire that forges you into someone stronger, wiser, more authentic than you could have ever become while staying comfortable in the crowd. You're not meant to go back to sleep. You're meant to learn to thrive while awake, to build a life that honors your understanding rather than hides it, to find the few who truly see you and cherish those connections like the rare treasures they are. Yes, you're lonely, but you're also free, you're also aware, you're also alive in a way most people never experience. And that, despite everything, is its own kind of gift. Thank you for watching Motivation Thrones. If these words found you when you needed them, you're exactly where you're meant to be. Share this with someone who's walking the lonely path of awakening. And remember, your understanding is not your curse, it's your compass.